Some love stories end, but continue to live inside your memory. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, because there is a person who is no longer in your life, but who continues to occupy a space that is impossible to explain. A space that is not just nostalgia or longing, but something deeper and more permanent. As if that person had left an imprint on the invisible structure of who you are. And no matter how much you try to move on, no matter how much you build new stories and new loves, there is something in that lost love that remains alive in a strange and painful way. And Simone Weil, a French philosopher who lived only 34 years, but who understood human suffering with a depth that few have achieved in entire lifetimes, dedicated her final years to exploring exactly that wound, that love that cannot be forgotten even when it needs to be left behind. And what she discovered will help you understand why you still feel the way you feel. Why it still hurts in ways you can't explain to anyone. Why there are nights when you wake up and for a moment forget that that person is no longer there, and then reality hits you again like a physical blow that steals the air from your lungs. Because Weil understood that some loves were not meant to end, but were also not meant to last, and that carrying this impossible contradiction inside your chest is one of the purest and most devastating forms of human suffering. Have you ever noticed how there are certain smells, certain music, certain combinations of light and shadow that instantly transport you back to moments with that person? And they are not necessarily the big moments, they are not the dramatic statements or the gestures great, but the small, mundane moments that now shine in the memory with an almost sacred intensity. The way she laughed at something silly, the way he looked at you when he thought you weren't looking. The comfortable silence of just being together without needing to fill every second with words. And Simone Weil would say that these fragments of memory are not just memories. They are presences. They are forms of attention crystallized in time that continue to exist. Because true love creates something that transcends the physical duration of the relationship. You try to explain to the friends, try to put into words why it still hurts so much. Why you can't just get over it and move on like everyone else seems to be able to do, and the words always come out wrong. They always sound like weakness or pathological attachment, and then you stop trying to explain and carry this pain alone. But Weil would tell you that there is nothing weak about you, that what you are feeling is not an inability to let go, but evidence that you truly loved. And true love leaves permanent marks on the soul. The body forgets, but the heart keeps what it never had. Goodbye. And that phrase is no cheap metaphor or empty consolation. It is an accurate description of how love works that has penetrated too deep to simply be filed away in the past. Because your body moves on, your days keep happening. You work and eat and sleep and even laugh from time to time. But your heart remains in a time that no longer exists except within you. And that parallel time, where that love is still alive, is as real as anything you touch with your hands. Well spent the last years of his life exploring the nature of attention, of love and memory, and she discovered something that most people are afraid to admit, that certain presences never completely leave us, that certain absences are just as powerful as presences were, and that trying to force yourself to forget is not only impossible, but also a betrayal of the truth of what has been experienced. And if you feel that these words are touching something inside you that has been waiting to be acknowledged, something that you could barely name, but that you have been carrying alone for so long, then subscribe to this channel now, because let's explore this specific pain together, and of loving someone who is no longer here, but also never truly left. Let's delve into Simone Weil's thoughts on love, loss, and the strange eternity that exists within memory. And you won't want to miss what comes next, because what she discovered about the nature of love that persists beyond separation will completely change how you understand what you still feel. And maybe, just maybe, it will give you permission to finally honor that pain instead of desperately trying to heal it. But before we go any further, I need to ask you a question. Importantly, have you realized that no one really taught you how to deal with this specific type of loss? No one gave you a map to navigate the impossible territory between remembering and forgetting, between honoring what was and building what can be. Because we live in a culture that treats breakups as a problem to be resolved quickly. like a wound that must heal within a specific period of time. 3 months, 6 months, a year at most. And if you are still feeling something after that arbitrary time, then there is something wrong with you. You are stuck in the past. You need to undergo more intense therapy, or take stronger medication, or simply decide to be happy, as if deep love could be turned off like a switch when it stops being convenient. And Simone Weil, who never married but who loved deeply in ways that few understood, knew that this rush to healing, this quickly overcome cultural anxiety, is actually a form of violence against the truth of what love really is. Because love is not a fleeting emotion that can be managed with positive psychology techniques. Love is ontological transformation. It is change in the fundamental structure of who you are, and when you truly love someone, you are not just sharing time and space with them, you are allowing them to rearrange the invisible architecture of your soul. And when they leave, whether by choice or circumstance or death, they do not just take their physical presence with them. They leave behind a space in their shape that nothing else can fill. And that empty space is not pathology. It is testimony. It is proof that something real happened, something that changed you permanently. And Weil would spend the last months of her life writing about this strange permanence of love, about how certain people come into our lives and mark us in ways that transcend any rational explanation. She would write about attention as a form of love, about how to give someone your undivided attention is to create a kind of connection that cannot be undone simply by physical separation. Because true attention, it's not just looking at someone, it's allowing them to fully exist in your consciousness. It's creating space within where they can completely be who they are without distortion or projection. And when you did that with someone, when you really saw them and allowed them to see you, something was created that has a life of its own, something that continues to exist even when the relationship ends. You remember the first time you realized that that person was different. It wasn't necessarily love at first sight or dramatic moment of recognition. It was something more subtle. It was realizing that when you were with them, you felt more yourself than anywhere else. It was discovering that the silence between you was comfortable instead of anxious. It was realizing that you didn't need to perform or impress or hide parts of yourself that you normally kept hidden. And Weil would say that this moment of recognition was no accident or coincidence. It was what she would call grace. It was a moment when something bigger than the two of you created the possibility of true connection. And that kind of connection leaves marks that no amount of time can completely erase. Because it wasn't just attraction or compatibility or right timing. It was a meeting of souls in a level that transcends all these superficial explanations. And now that it is over, now that that person is no longer in your life the way he was, you carry within you not just memories, but presences. Not just memories, but continuations. Because every conversation you had, every moment shared, every look that carried more meaning than 1,000 words, all of this created something that has an existence of its own, something that lives in a dimension of the real that is neither past nor present, but something in between. And Simone Weil dedicated much of her late philosophical work to exploring exactly this dimension. This impossible space where love continues to exist after the physical conditions for its existence have disappeared. And what it has discovered will help you understand that you are not crazy, you are not weak, you are not pathologically stuck in the past. You are simply being true to the truth of what happened. You are honoring the reality of a connection that was too deep to simply be filed away as a closed chapter. But understanding it intellectually doesn't make the pain any less. It doesn't make the nights easier. It doesn't stop the moments when you see something they would love, and yours. The first impulse is to share with them, before remembering that you can't do it anymore. It doesn't stop the phantom pain of reaching for the phone to send a message to someone who is no longer there to receive it. Because the body forgets, but the heart keeps it. And your body has learned new ways, created new routines, adapted to their physical absence. But your heart remains stubbornly fixed in a time that no longer exists except in memory and longing. And this dissociation between the body that forgets and the heart that remembers is one of the cruelest forms of human suffering. Because you can't force your heart to keep pace with your body. You can't just decide to stop feeling what you feel, and all that. The attempt to do so only increases the suffering because it adds a layer of guilt and shame on top of the already existing pain. Weil understood this deeply because she herself lived with this kind of impossible love. Not in the conventional romantic sense, but in the sense of loves that could not be fulfilled in the ways the world expects. She loved God with an all-consuming intensity, but refused baptism because she felt she needed to remain outside the institutional church to be faithful to her calling. She loved the truth with a passion that led her to work in brutal factories to understand the suffering of others. Workers, she loved France with a devotion that made her try to starve in solidarity with compatriots under Nazi occupation. These were all loves that could not be satisfied or fulfilled in conventional ways. They were loves that existed in permanent tension between desire and impossibility. And from that tension, she learned something crucial about the nature of true love. That love is not about possessing or being possessed. It is not about having needs met or holes filled. True love is pure attention. It is the ability to see another as they really are without distortion of our own desires and fears. And when you love someone like that, when you really see them and are seen by them, that mutual vision creates something eternal, something that doesn't depend on the physical continuity of the relationship to continue existing. And maybe that's why it hurts so much. Because, deep down, that what you had was real in a way that transcends superficial explanations about compatibility or timing. You know that you were seen and loved in a way that doesn't happen often in life, and losing that isn't like losing anything else. It's like losing a piece of yourself that you didn't even know existed until that person showed you. And now you walk through the world with this person-shaped hole inside you. And the people around you don't understand why you haven't gotten over them yet, why you still talk about them sometimes, why certain dates or places or songs still completely mess you up. And you try to explain, but words always fail, because how do you explain that someone has become part of the fabric of your being, that they are not just external memory, but internal presence that permeates everything you are? Simone Weil would say that what you are experiencing is a form of affliction. A word she used to describe suffering that is not just physical or emotional pain, but something that strikes the soul directly. Affliction is suffering that threatens to destroy not just your comfort, but your own ability to make sense of the world. And loss of true love is exactly that kind of affliction, because it is not just loss of companionship or comfort. It is loss of the mirror that reflected back to you the truth of who you were. It is loss of the witness to your existence that made your life real in ways that you didn't even realize until they left. But Weil also discovered something extraordinary about grief, that at the bottom of that unbearable suffering, there is the possibility of transformation that can't happen any other way. That when you descend completely into the abyss of loss without trying to escape or assuage or explain, you find something deep down that changes everything. It's not cheap consolation or false optimism. It's profound truth about the nature of love and existence that can only be seen from this depth. And that's where we're going now, to the bottom of that abyss. And I need to warn you that it's going to get darker before there's any light, that we're going to have to look directly at things that you've probably avoided looking at because it hurts too much. But trust me, trust Simone Weil, because she made this journey before us and left a map. And if you've made it this far, if you're still with me after everything we've said, then you have enough courage to continue. The first thing we need to recognize, and this will hurt, but it needs to be said, is that love is not coming back. No, in the way you want, not in the way that your heart still begs in moments of weakness. And I know that part of you already knows this rationally. You are not a child, nor are you in denial. But there is a difference between knowing something in your head and accepting something in your heart. And your heart has not yet completely accepted it. It still keeps a small flame of hope burning. It still creates impossible scenarios in which things could be different, in which you could try again, in which time you could go back and you could make different choices. And Weil would tell you that this hope is not weakness, but a form of love. It is your heart refusing to accept that something so deep and true could simply end. But it would also tell you that this hope is keeping you stuck in impossible limbo, preventing you from fully inhabiting the truth of your situation. Because while you keep the door open for the possibility of return, you cannot. Before you can really begin to live with the reality of absence, you remain in a state of waiting that consumes your vital energy and prevents you from being fully present in your life as it is now. And the first descent into the abyss is to completely accept, not just intellectually, but viscerally, that it is over, that that version of your life where you were together belongs to the past and cannot be recovered, and that acceptance is not bitter resignation or defeated giving up. It is what Weil would call consent. It is an active choice to align yourself with reality. Instead of fighting it, but how do you do it? How do you close the door that your heart desperately wants to keep open? Weil's answer would be that you don't close the door once and for all with a dramatic gesture of overcoming. You practice closing it repeatedly, every day, every time your heart tries to open it again. Every time you find yourself fantasizing about reconciliation or second chances, you gently acknowledge what you are doing and choose to come back to reality. Not with harshness or self-criticism, but with compassion. Because your heart, it's just trying to protect you from the utter pain of loss, and there's something touching and human about that attempt, even when it's keeping you trapped. So you practice saying to yourself, not cruelly, but with gentle firmness, this is over, this person isn't coming back. This life I imagined with them isn't going to happen. And every time you do that, every time you choose reality over fantasy, you are descending a little deeper into the abyss. And yes, it hurts more at first. It hurts intensely to accept that there is no going back, that there is no happy ending of the kind you hoped for. But Weil discovered that only by descending completely can you eventually find solid ground. Only by going through the pain can you come out on the other side. And while you stay on the surface, while avoiding complete descent into the abyss, you remain in prolonged agony of resistance. Because the second thing you need to recognize, and this is even harder, is that they have moved on in ways that you have not, or perhaps you have also moved on externally, but not internally. Perhaps you are both living new lives, but for you that love still occupies central space that you don't occupy for them. And there is something deeply unfair and painful about that, because you continue to carry the weight of that connection while they have perhaps already let go, or at least seem to have let go. And you wonder why you can't do the same, why you are still trapped while they are free. And Weil would tell you that this isn't about you being weaker or more attached. It's about you having loved differently, maybe more deeply, maybe more totally. And deep love digs deeper roots, and those roots take longer to pull out. But she would also tell you something radical, that maybe you shouldn't be trying to uproot those roots completely. Maybe trying to eliminate every trace of that love is actually the problem. Because when you try to force yourself to feel nothing, you end up freezing. Not just the love, but all your emotions. You become less able to feel anything deeply. And Weil believed that maintaining the ability to feel deeply is more important than eliminating pain. So maybe the question is not how to stop loving them, but how to transform the form of that love. How to allow it exist in a way that honors what was, but doesn't paralyze you in the present. And that brings us to the second descent into the abyss, which is recognizing that you still love them, that maybe you will always love them in some way, and that this is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be accepted. Because true love has no off button. It cannot simply be decided out of existence, and the more you try to force it out of existence, the more power you give it over you. So what if instead of fighting that love, you simply recognize it? What if you said to yourself, yes, I still love this person. Yes, part of me will always love them. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm stuck or weak or sick. It just means that I have truly loved, and true love leaves permanent marks. And before we continue deeper into this descent, before we explore what Simone Weil discovered about transforming this impossible love, I want to pause and create a moment of connection, because there is something powerful about knowing that you are not alone in this pain, that around the world, right now, there are other people who are feeling what you feel, carrying what you carry. So tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? Which city? Which country? Because when you share your location, you are saying, I am here. I exist. I feel this too. And there is silent solidarity in knowing that this particular pain is universal, even when it feels completely lonely. Aya. So leave your mark. Tell us where you watch us from. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find someone close to you who is also navigating these impossible waters. And now we're going to continue the descent. Because Weil discovered something about that love that persists beyond the relationship that will help you understand them in a completely new way. She realized that when we truly love someone, we're not just responding to specific characteristics of them. We're not just in love with their personality or appearance or the way they make us feel. We're responding to something else. Deep, something she would call their essential presence. And that presence is not diminished by physical absence. In fact, sometimes absence allows us to see that presence more clearly because it is no longer obscured by all the little irritations and disappointments of everyday life. When someone is physically present, we inevitably project our needs and expectations onto them. We inevitably become frustrated when they don't live up to the image we have created. But in absence, especially in permanent absence, we have the opportunity to finally see them as they really were, without distortion of our own desires. And Weil would say that this clear seeing in absence is a purer form of love than anything we experienced when they were present, because now you can love them without wanting anything from them. Without needing them to be or do anything specific, you can simply honor their existence and the way they have touched you. And this is what she would call impersonal love, not in the sense of cold or distant, but in the sense of ego-free, need-free. And the third descent into the abyss is recognizing that the purest form of loving that person now is to let them go completely. Not forget them, but free them from all your expectations and needs. And that is brutal paradox because you are being called to love more deeply while letting go completely. You are being called to honor the connection while accepting the separation. And that is perhaps the hardest thing a human being can be called to do, because our instinct is to hold, to possess, to keep close, and love that you cannot possess seems impossible, seems a contradiction in terms. But Weil spent his life exploring exactly this kind of love. Love that does not seek to possess, but only to contemplate. Love that does not demand reciprocity, but gives itself freely. Love that does not need a present object to continue loving. And she discovered that this kind of love, however painful it may be to cultivate, is actually stronger and more lasting than love based on possession. Because love that depends on possession is always threatened by loss, is always anxious, always afraid. But love that has already accepted loss, love that has already experienced the death of what it was, this love cannot be threatened by nothing else because you have already survived the worst. And now you are at the bottom of the abyss. Now you are in the place where it hurts so much that it seems impossible that you will survive. You are in the place where all illusions have been stripped away, where all comfortable hopes have been destroyed, where you are face to face with the naked truth of your situation. That person is not coming back. You have to live with that absence. You have to find a way to continue when an essential part of you seems to have been ripped away. And Weil would tell you that this moment of utter despair, is actually the most sacred moment, because it is here, at the complete bottom of the abyss, that transformation becomes possible, not before. Not when you are still clinging to hopes or illusions, but now, when you have finally let it all go. When you have finally completely consented to reality, now something new can be born. Because what Weil discovered deep in his own suffering is that when you completely stop resisting, when you fully accept what is, there is moment of grace, moment when something greater than you enter the space created by your acceptance. And it's not that the pain disappears, or that you magically forget or overcome it. The pain is still there. The lack is still there. But the relationship with the pain changes fundamentally because you stop fighting it. You stop seeing it as an enemy to be defeated, and you start seeing it as a teacher, as a bearer of truth that you could not learn otherwise. And the truth that this lost love came to teach you is that you are capable of loving deeply, that you have the capacity for connection. True, that you can be touched and transformed by another person in ways that most people never experience, and that ability doesn't go away because the relationship ended. That ability is a permanent part of who you are now, and you can take that ability forward. You can use it to love other people. You can use it to love the world. You can use it to love life even when life hurts. And Weil would tell you that this is if the love you carry, even in its wounded form, even in its inability to be satisfied, is in fact your greatest treasure. Because most people go their entire lives without ever truly loving, without ever opening themselves completely to another person, without ever risking being transformed by deep connection. And you did that. You had the courage to love that way. And now you are paying the price for that courage. But the price is worth it, because the alternative would be to live your entire life protected but empty, safe but never truly touched. And the second truth that the pain came teaching you is about the nature of presence and absence. That presence is not just physical, that someone can be physically absent but present in 1,000 other ways, in the choices you make because they taught you to see the world differently, in the values you hold because they exemplified those values, in the way you love other people because you learned from them what true love means. So they are not really absent. They are present in a different way, a way that is in some ways deeper than physical presence, because it cannot be lost, because it is integrated into who you have become. And the third truth is that absence can be a form of love, that letting go completely, consenting at a distance, allowing them to exist without your presence in the same way you exist without theirs. That is an act of love deeper than holding on. And Weil experienced this in her own relationship with God. She loved God with an intensity that consumed her, but she refused baptism because she felt that God was calling her to love Him. From outside the institutional church, she had to learn to love a presence that seemed constantly absent. She had to learn to wait without knowing. If what she expected was going to come, she had to learn to love without the possibility of possession or control. And on the other side of this painful learning, she discovered that the absence of God was actually the purest form of presence, because it forced her to love Him without mediation, without the comfort of ritual or community, just naked love in the face of emptiness. And the same is true for you. The absence of the person you love is forcing you to discover that true love does not depend on physical presence, does not depend on reciprocity, does not depend on anything except your own ability to continue loving. And that discovery is both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it means there is no escape from the pain. Liberating because it means that your love cannot be taken from you. You can continue loving even when there is no longer an object present to receive that love. And this love without an object, this love that gives freely without expectation of return, is what Weil would call divine love. Not in the religious sense necessarily, but in the sense of love that transcends all normal human limitations. So now you are at the bottom of the abyss, and you discovered these truths. And perhaps you are wondering, and now, how do I live with this? How do I live daily with this wound that will not heal? With this love that cannot be satisfied? With this absence that is a form of presence? And Weil developed concrete practices not to eliminate pain, but to live with it in a way that preserves your dignity and your sanity. And the first practice is what she called attention. And attention for Weil was not just concentration, but a form of total presence and without judgment. So every morning, when you start your day, before checking your phone or thinking about tasks, you take 10 minutes to simply be aware of the pain. You sit in silence and observe how the absence of that person manifests itself in you today. Maybe it's tightness in your chest. Maybe it's a feeling of emptiness. Maybe it's just the weight of knowing that they're not there. And you don't try to change or fix anything. You just watch with gentle attention, like someone watching a crying child with compassion, but without the need to make the pain stop immediately. And Weil would say that this pure attention to your own pain is a form of prayer. It's a way of honoring the truth of what you are feeling without trying to escape or deny it. And with practice, you will realize that the pain changes when you stop fighting it. It does not disappear, but becomes more bearable, more integrated, less able to completely dominate you. The second practice is what she called decreation, which is the practice of letting go of the stories your mind tells you about the pain. Because your mind cannot simply feel the pain. It needs to create narratives. This will never get better. I will always be alone. I will never love like this again. I made a terrible mistake in letting them go. If I had done it differently, we would still be together. And these narratives are not the pain itself. They are additions that your mind creates that amplify and prolong the suffering. So the practice is to notice when you are creating story and gently let it go. Not with force or self-criticism, but with lightness. Oh, there is my mind telling stories again. And then you return to the raw feeling of loss without the narrative, and you will find that the raw feeling is more bearable than the stories you tell about it. The third practice is to seek beauty in the midst of the pain. And this is not distraction or escapism, but recognition that reality contains both pain and beauty simultaneously. So when the pain is unbearable, you deliberately find something beautiful. It can be sky, music, poem, flower, anything that touches you aesthetically, and you give it attention. Total this beauty for 5 minutes, not to forget the pain, but to remember that the world is big enough to contain both, pain and beauty, absence and presence, loss and grace. And Weil would say that beauty is experimental proof that transcendence is possible, that we can be elevated beyond ourselves even in the midst of suffering. The fourth practice is to write a letter to the absent person, not to send, but as a ritual of recognition. Once a week you sit down with paper and pen and write to them as if they could read it. You tell them what you are feeling. Thank them for what they taught you. Recognize the pain of absence. Ask for strength to continue. And then you burn the letter or keep it in a private place. It doesn't matter. What matters is the act of honoring the connection through writing, of giving tangible form to what is inside you. And often you will find that writing brings clarity. It brings temporary relief. It brings a feeling that you have done something with the pain instead of just carrying it passively. The fifth practice is to continue living fully even with the wound. And this is perhaps the most difficult because there is temptation to make pain your identity, to let loss define who you are. But Weil would tell you that honoring the love you feel doesn't mean stopping living. It means living more fully because now you know the value of true connection. So you keep working, creating, loving other people, pursuing projects that matter to you, not to forget, but to integrate, to allow the pain to be part of you, but not all of you. And there is something that Weil would call impersonal love in this practice, which is the ability to give full attention to other people and activities even when your heart still hurts. And strangely, when you do this, when you live fully despite the pain, you are honoring what that person saw in you. You are being worthy of the love you received. The sixth practice is nightly ritual of recognition. Before you sleep, you recognize 3 things: a truth that the pain revealed to you today, a moment of grace, even if small, and a choice you made to continue, and you don't need to write it down or say it out loud. Just recognize it internally, and over time, this recognition creates a sense of progress. No linear progress of overcoming, but spiral progress of deepening, of living more truly with what is. And Weil would tell you that this daily recognition is a form of gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain, but gratitude for the ability to feel, for the courage to continue, for the truth that is being revealed even when it hurts. And now we need to recognize something important about all these practices. They are not a magic solution. They will not make you wake up one day and discover that the pain is gone. There will be days when you won't be able to do any of them. Days when the pain will be so great that you can barely do it. Breathing. And that's okay. It's not failure. It's part of the process, because living with the loss of true love is not linear. It's not a matter of getting a little better each day until you're healed. It's more like waves. There are days of relative calm, and days when you are dragged down again, and Weil herself didn't perfectly live what she taught. She had moments of despair, moments when she wanted to give up, moments when the pain was too much, and still she continued. Still she chose every day to align herself with the truth, even when true it hurt, and that's what these practices offer you. Not the elimination of pain, but a way to carry the pain with dignity, a way to continue choosing life even when life includes irreparable loss. And maybe, just maybe, there will be moments of grace, moments when you feel their presence in a way that transcends physical absence, moments when you realize that the love you shared has not died but only changed form, moments when gratitude for having found each other will be greater than the pain of being separated. Weil would tell you that these moments cannot be forced or sought after. They come when they come, as grace always comes, not because we deserve it, or because we have worked hard enough, but because we create space for them through our acceptance, through our attention, through our refusal to deny the truth of what we feel, and these moments change something fundamental in you. They don't eliminate the pain, but they change your relationship with the pain. You realize that you can carry it, that you are strong enough. I know that you can live a full life even with a wound that never completely heals. And now we have reached the end of this journey together, and I want to recognize you. I want to honor the courage you had to get this far, to look directly at what hurts, to not run away when it got difficult, because most people never have that courage. Most choose distraction or denial or bitterness. But you chose to look, you chose to feel, you chose to seek truth even when truth hurts. And that says something profound about who you are. Simone Weil lived only 34 years, but in that short time, she looked deeper into the nature of human suffering than most dare in a lifetime. And what she saw can be summed up like this: the body forgets, but the heart holds what it never said goodbye to. And that is not weakness or pathology. It is testimony that you truly loved. And true love creates something eternal, something that transcends time and space and separation. You are not alone in this pain. Around the world there are others who are carrying lost loves, others who are learning to live with absences that are forms of presence, others who are discovering that transformation comes not from overcoming, but from going through. And if anything in this video resonated with you, if you felt like someone finally understood what you are carrying, then leave a like now, because it shows me that these words are reaching those who need them. And subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring these deep truths together, because there is more to be said, more truths to be discovered, more ways to live fully, even when life includes loss, and you deserve to have company in this journey. You deserve to know that you are not walking alone. The wound you carry, however heavy it may be, is shaping you into something you cannot yet see but will one day recognize. It is teaching you about the depths of which you are capable, about truth that you can bear, about love that you can give even when there is no guarantee of return. And these lessons are painful but sacred. They are what Weil would call the formation of the soul, not in the necessary religious sense, but in the sense that you are becoming more truly who you are through this suffering. And maybe one day, not today or tomorrow, but someday in the future, you will look back and see that this lost love was not just loss, but also gained, not because the pain was justified or because it had to be this way, but because you chose to transform the pain into wisdom, the absence into a different presence, the loss into a deeper capacity to love. And until then, until that perhaps distant day, you simply carry on, one day at a time, one breath at a time, practicing mindfulness, practicing acceptance, practicing what Weil would call consent to reality. And when the days are too hard, when you feel too alone, come back here. Come back to these words, because they will be waiting for you, just as I will be, just as everyone who watched this video and recognized their own pain in the words will be. You are part now of the invisible community of people who have had the courage to love deeply and are now learning to bear loss with dignity. And there is beauty in that community. There is strength in that mutual recognition, even between strangers. So thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me with your pain. Thank you for giving Simone Weil a chance, to speak through the years and tongues and touch your wound with her eternal truths, keep looking, keep feeling, keep living, because that's exactly what she would do. That's exactly what anyone who has ever truly loved should do. And remember, the body forgets, but the heart keeps. And that's a blessing disguised as a wound. It's proof that you've truly lived, you've truly loved, you've truly risked, and no loss can take that away from you.